That cheap jewelry you're wearing out in public," the manager screamed in the old man's face. No one in the cafe spoke up. He just quietly bent down, trembling hands picking up the Purple Heart medal torn from his chest. 45 minutes later, 400 veterans walked into the cafe, uniforms pressed sharp, eyes hard as steel. The manager had no idea. He'd just insulted a man who once saved 2 soldiers in a hail of bullets. What would you do if you witnessed this? Walk away or stand up? Memorial Day morning. Frank Delaney, 84 years old, former Marine, walked into Garden Café like he had every year for the past decade. He chose the same corner table, always the same spot, always the same ritual. Carried with him a small wooden box containing his Purple Heart and Silver Star. Not for show, not for attention, for remembrance. The box was worn smooth from years of handling, edges soft from countless memorial days. Inside, 17 names were engraved on the lid. His brothers, the ones who never made it home. Maria, the familiar waitress, greeted him with her warm smile. Same as always. Her eyes held the respect that comes from knowing someone's story without needing to ask. Frank smiled back, his voice soft but steady. "Today's special, Maria, for those who didn't make it home." She nodded, poured his coffee. Black, no sugar. Same order for 10 years. The cafe began filling up. Families in their Sunday best. Children running between tables laughing. The morning buzz of Memorial Day conversations. People planning barbecues, discussing beach trips. The holiday had become something different for most Americans. But not for Frank. For him, it remained what it was meant to be. A day of remembrance. He carefully opened his wooden box. Removed the Purple Heart first. Then, the Silver Star. His fingers moved with practiced reverence, pinning them to his worn brown jacket. The same jacket he'd worn for 15 years. Frayed at the edges, faded from washing. But clean. Always clean. That's when Chad Wilson noticed him. The new manager, 30 years old. Arrogant. Fresh out of business school. Full of opinions about customer image and cafe aesthetics. Chad had been watching Frank with growing irritation. This old man with his weird ritual, his shabby clothes, his attention-seeking behavior. Chad strutted over, voice loud enough for the entire cafe to hear, wanting to make a scene. "Hey, old-timer, fake medals, right? Buy those online?" The cafe fell silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Children stopped running. Frank looked up calmly, his weathered hands steady on his coffee cup, eyes meeting Chad's without flinching. "I served in Vietnam, son." Chad laughed. Actually laughed. Loud and mocking. "Sure you did, Grandpa. What's next? You gonna tell me you won the war single-handed?" Then he did the unthinkable. He reached down and ripped the Purple Heart from Frank's jacket. The pin caught the fabric, tore it. The metal clattered to the floor like a piece of trash. Frank stared at his Purple Heart on the dirty cafe floor. The metal that represented his blood, his sacrifice, his brothers who died beside him. He slowly bent down to retrieve it. His knees creaked. His balance wavered. The chair scraped against the floor as he nearly fell. Every person in that cafe saw it happen. 37 people. Families with children. Couples on dates. Regulars reading newspapers. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They looked away. Pulled out their phones. Suddenly very interested in their breakfast plates. A 7-year-old boy started to walk toward Frank. His mother grabbed his arm, pulled him back. Don't get involved, sweetie. It's not our business. An elderly woman at the next table turned her head, pretended to study the menu she'd read 100 times. A young couple whispered to each other, then got up and left. Too uncomfortable to stay, Frank whispered to himself, barely audible. I'm used to it. His fingers fumbled with the broken pin, trying to reattach his purple heart to his torn jacket. The fabric kept slipping. The pin wouldn't hold. Chad walked away, laughing with his co-workers behind the counter, making jokes about old fakes playing dress-up for attention. Some people have no shame, Chad said loudly, coming in here with fake military stuff. Probably never served a day in his life. Frank finally got the medal attached. He stood slowly, left exact change on the table, plus a $5 tip for Maria. She couldn't look him in the eye, too ashamed of her silence. As Frank reached the door, he pulled out an old flip phone, the kind with actual buttons, the kind that still worked when newer technology failed. His arthritic fingers moved slowly across the keypad. He sent one simple text message, 5 words that would change everything. Flag down. Code. Honor. Then he walked out into the morning sun, alone, carrying his box of memories and his dignity intact despite everything. This is where Emily Delaney takes over the story. Frank's daughter, investigative journalist, the one who knows the truth about those medals. Her father never talked about the war, never bragged about his service, never used his medals to get special treatment or recognition. The opposite, actually. Once a year, on Memorial Day, he would open that wooden box, not to show off, to read the names inscribed inside the lid. 17 names. His unit. The ones who didn't come home from the jungles of Southeast Asia. Emily had tried for years to get him to talk about Vietnam, to share his stories, to let her write about his heroism. He always refused. Some things are meant to be remembered quietly, he would say. Not everything needs to be a story. But Emily knew the truth. She'd done her research, found the official records, interviewed the survivors. During the Tet Offensive in 1968, Frank was a supply sergeant stationed 20 miles behind the front lines. Not infantry, not supposed to see combat. But when Alpha Company got pinned down by enemy fire, Frank volunteered for rescue. He wasn't ordered to go. He asked to go. He held a defensive position for 48 hours straight. Bandaged wounded soldiers under mortar fire. Carried 2 dying Marines to the extraction helicopter, while blood poured from a bullet wound in his own leg. The official citation for his Silver Star reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and extraordinary heroism in action against enemy forces." Frank never read it aloud, ever. After the war, he became a high school history teacher, started a scholarship fund for children of disabled veterans, worked 3 jobs to keep it funded, never asked for recognition, never sought publicity. Those medals stayed in that box 364 days a year, only came out on Memorial Day. Only for one morning. Only to remember the names of brothers who never got to grow old. Frank taught Emily that honor isn't about being thanked. It's about doing right when nobody's watching. It's about standing up when others sit down. But someone had just decided that Frank's quiet dignity was fair game for public humiliation. They had no idea what they'd awakened. At 9:30 a.m., Chad was refilling the coffee machine when the first veteran walked through the café door. Marine dress blues, ribbons perfectly aligned, silver hair, straight posture. He said nothing, just stood by the entrance, arms at his sides, eyes forward. Chad glanced over. "You need something, sir?" No response. Then another veteran walked in. Army dress uniform, same stance, same silence. Took position next to the Marine. Then 10 more. Then 20. Then 50. They filled the cafe, spilled onto the sidewalk, blocked traffic on Main Street. All in uniform. All standing at attention. All completely silent. Chad looked around nervously. The other customers were staring, some taking pictures, some backing toward the exit. Can I help you guys? You want to order something? The silence was deafening. Just the sound of breathing, the subtle rustle of starched uniforms, the ticking of the wall clock. A lieutenant colonel stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes like granite. His name tag read Moore. His chest was covered in ribbons, combat decorations, service medals. 1 hour ago, he said, voice cutting through the silence like a blade. You physically assaulted a veteran wearing earned decorations. Chad's face went white. I didn't assault anyone. Just some old guy with fake medals trying to get attention. The lieutenant colonel removed his phone, showed Chad a photograph. Frank Delaney in military dress, 1969. Young face, same eyes, receiving his Purple Heart from a general. This is my grandfather. Then the stories began. One by one, veterans stepping forward from the crowd. Frank Delaney pulled me out of a rice paddy in Laos, saved my life. He paid for my college when the GI Bill wasn't enough. He was my high school history teacher, taught me what honor really means. My father served with him, said Frank was the bravest man he ever knew. Each testimony hit Chad like a physical blow. This wasn't some random old man seeking attention. This was a genuine war hero, a man who'd earned every piece of metal on his chest with blood and sacrifice. The lieutenant colonel continued, his voice never rising but carrying absolute authority. You will apologize, publicly, on your knees. Zrenia, Chad oględnувшись в Café. Every customer staring. His co-workers hiding behind the counter, the weight of 400 sets of eyes bearing down on him. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't know. I made a mistake. Not to us, the lieutenant colonel said. To him. The cafe door opened with a soft chime. Frank Delaney walked back in, carrying his wooden box, wearing his torn jacket with the Purple Heart pinned carefully back in place. He surveyed the room. 400 men and women in uniform, all standing for him, all showing him the respect that 37 civilians had failed to give. Frank walked slowly to the center of the cafe, set his box on the counter, looked directly at Chad, who was now on his knees, sobbing. Stand up, son. Chad rose slowly, hands shaking, face red with shame and tears. Frank opened his wooden box, pulled out the photograph Emily had mentioned. 17 young faces in military fatigues. His unit, his brothers. You want to apologize to someone? Apologize to them. Frank's voice was steady, without anger. They died so you could have the freedom to disrespect their sacrifice. Frank's voice never rose, never wavered. But every word carried the weight of earned authority, the kind that comes from facing death and choosing to serve anyway. I don't need your apology, Chad. I've heard worse from better men. But these boys, he touched each face in the photograph with reverence. They never got to come home, never got to have families, never got to see their children grow up. Chad was crying openly now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. Frank placed a gentle hand on Chad's shoulder, the same hand that had once carried wounded soldiers to safety. Get up, son. Crying doesn't fix anything. learning does. The video of what happened next went viral within hours. 400 veterans stand for one disrespected hero. Millions of views, thousands of shares, comments pouring in from around the world. But for Frank, it was never about the attention. It was about honor. And sometimes, honor requires witnesses. Honor doesn't need applause. It lives in quiet actions, like an old man returning to a cafe every morning just to sip coffee and remember his brothers. Not every hero wears a uniform. Not every medal hangs on a chest. Some things are kept in the heart, only revealed when the world forgets how to bow its head. We don't need many words. We just need to stand up when silence becomes complicity. If this moment moved you to silence, comment one word: respect. So those who sacrificed are still remembered. You don't need to do something huge. Just don't look away when truth is being disrespected. Honor starts with the smallest action.